Welcome to the Bucky Brooks Show. I am Bucky Brooks, and I am excited because we're going to talk about the two teams, the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks, that are going to meet up in Super Bowl 60. This is a fantastic matchup. Even though the football world doesn't appear to be super excited about the teams, I think these are two compelling franchises based on the way that they've orchestrated quick turnaround. So, what I want to do today is because we have so much time before they square off in a couple weeks, I just want to talk about the construction of the teams and some of the observations that I have when I did a deep dive on both of the franchises. Um, let's start with the Patriots. And I think the Patriots are fascinating because last year they were 4-13. Gerard Mayo was the coach. They fire him. They bring on Mike Vrabel, a Patriots Hall of Famer, a guy who has um, done everything in this league as a player, then as a coach. He was a head coach for the Tennessee Titans. Some would say that he did the most with the least in Tennessee frequently, had a winning record there. He was a guy who always had a team that was tough and competitive and feisty. The thing that you respected about him and those teams, regardless of what their record was, regardless of who they showed up with, they were going to make it an ugly game where they force you to play on their terms. And some of that was due to their toughness and tenacity, but a lot of that was due to the way that he utilized tactics to put the team in the best position to win. And when you think about a tactician and a strategist, all those things, Mike Vrabel grades out at an A plus. I just think about the way that he ran down the time in a playoff game against the Patriots against his mentor Bill Belichick, and how that might have frustrated Bill Belichick that the former player, got him, but it really speaks to his understanding of the game and understanding of strategy to put his team in the best position to win. Well, when you bring him back, and look, it was controversial a little bit when he brought him back because people said uh, owner Robert Kraft wasn't necessarily fair to Gerard Mayo because it was a rebuilding project. You gave him 1 year and you ushered him out. But I'll say when you look back at that move, there was some brilliance in that move in terms of who they brought in and what they have been able to recreate. Basically, Mike Vrabel is his own man, but the Patriot way is very much like the Patriot way that existed in the 2000s when he was a player. When you look at the Patriots now, when I watched them on tape, they're running the same plays, executing the same stunts and games on defense that they did back in the day when Willie McGinnis and Roman Pfeiffer and Vrabel and all those guys were there. Offensively, this offense looks like the same version that they ran when Charlie Weiss and then Josh McDaniels was calling the plays back in the day. And what they've been able to do is bring all the great things about that era back, while Mike Vrabel has been able to kind of put his own spin on it. And I would say that his spin is one where it has more of a, I won't say a gentle touch, but there's definitely more of a human connection with this team based on how he interacts with the team and the players and everybody. And if you have an opportunity, look, there's a great docu-series that the Patriots have put out called Forge in Foxborough, where you can see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff and how they built the team. But I would tell you, in talking to people in the building and watching this from afar, he has done a great job of establishing the culture in New England. There's an example because I think a couple weeks ago on NFL Countdown, Sunday Countdown before the game, they talked about how he used something that he learned from Cleveland working with Kevin Stefanski, but it's something that John Gordon, a great author who has written all these books, all these fables that really talk about team building, like Energy Bus is one of John Gordon's books. But Mike Vrabel used a thing called the 4 H's, where he had everyone in the room, all the team members, coaches share the 4 H's. And the H's were history, heroes, heartbreak, and hopes, where everyone shared their history, how they got here, their heroes, who are the heroes in their life, when they've had their heart broken and how they bounce back, and what are their hopes for the future. Well, he went first. And when you share like that with your team, that vulnerability allows the team to connect with you and allows everyone to connect with each other. And one of the things that you always notice with Mike Vrabel is he always talks about the team and he doesn't put himself first. He puts the team first, the players first, and those things. And I'll say this, he is the modern definition of a player's coach because he understands the players And he gets that, but he's still firm with the players the way that you need to be with all team team members. You need to be firm. You need to have a set of rules. You need to have things that you establish. But when you have that human touch, because you've walked in those shoes, it hits a little different. And one of the things that I've heard him talk about when it comes to building this team, I can have a team full of different personalities, but we can't have different mentalities. Meaning, look, you can act a certain way away from the game, away from the facility, and those things. But when we're in the building, we're dealing with the team. Everybody has to have the same mindset. We got to be tough. We got to be selfless. We got to be about the team. We got to do things the right way. We got to be committed and accountable in those things. And for him to understand that and to pass that along, where look, I want you to be yourselves, but when you're here, you got to be about the right stuff. I think that speaks to his experience and his expertise as a coach. The other thing that speaks to his expertise as a coach, the coaches that he has around him and how they've really done a great job with his team. You can talk about Josh McDaniels and offensively what they've done to elevate Drake May into the MVP conversation. Drake May, second-year player coming out of North Carolina. First year was up and down. And really, let's be honest, I'm a Tar Heel. I watched him closely. I was in school when his dad was a GA. I had concerns about him just because he hadn't played a lot in college. But Josh McDaniels has helped him go to the next level. And it's the same thing that we've seen the Patriots do with other quarterbacks. People are talking about Tom Brady, but hey, let's cast Tom Brady aside. But let's talk about how well these other guys played in this system during that time. Let's talk about what Matt Castle was able to do. Let's talk about what Jimmy Garoppolo was able to do. So the system is tried and true. And what they've been able to do is to get him to buy into the system, to tap into all of the great things that have happened in the past in terms of their situational awareness, their game management, the high efficiency passing game that they operate, being able to sometimes step back and run the football effectively. Because at the end of the day, man, the Patriots have established a team that is just about winning. And a lot of that springs from the quarterback, but more importantly, it stems from Josh McDaniels understanding how to teach quarterbacks how to play the game the right way. And when I look at what Drake May has done, because let's be honest, in the AFC Championship game, he had 86 passing yards, but he ran for 68. And of those 68 rushing yards, there were critical rushing yards, particularly the bootleg that he kept at the end to secure the first down. There was a game sealing, game clinching first down. To me, that's coaching. It comes from Josh McDaniels, but also comes from Mike Vrabel, clearly understanding what he wanted from this team and how he wanted this team to play. Stefon Diggs is another example of the Patriot way and how it's unfolded. When I talk about that quote, different personalities, but we got to have the same mentality. And with Stefon Diggs, people will talk about Cardi B and Cardi B being around and how he is kind of a man around town and how people view him and revere him for maybe some of his pop cultural stuff. But in the building, this dude has been terrific as their number one receiver. Coming off an ACL injury, he has been exactly what Drake May has needed. And much like he did for Josh Allen. Because remember, when he went to Buffalo, it's not a coincidence that Josh Allen's best years happened when Stefon Diggs was there. He gave him the steady Eddie, the dependable, reliable playmaker that he could lean on. 4 straight seasons with 100 catches and 1,000 yards. He did that in Buffalo. And for the Patriots, he's been that, I would say, that steady force, that consistent piece that Drake May needed to be able to trust the rest of the players in the passing game. He also has set the example with his work ethic and those things. You can talk about a lot of things with Stefon Diggs away from the field, but no one can ever question how he works and how other people, young guys, look to him to follow that lead when it comes to the way that he works at practice and preparing to make sure that he's always at his best on game day. That has been a big boon. And when they signed him, remember, there are a lot of people like, man, I don't know. How's he going to fit? How's he going to work out? But Mike Vrabel understood the character of the guys, understood the team, and it's worked out for the Patriots. Well, people talk about the draft picks like Will Campbell and some of those young guys that have come on board, young offensive line that has been able to do it. Morgan Moses as a vet, kind of being a stabilizing force. They have the right pieces in place that have helped this offense, for the most part, run through the AFC. And even though people are talking about, oh, they had the easy schedule, Look, man, you don't win 14 regular season games without being a really good team. You don't go on the road, knock off the number one seed in Denver Broncos with or without their starting quarterback. They did that against a team that was talented. They found a way to get it done. I would say the brilliance in Mike Vrabel and the Patriots also can be seen on the defensive side of the ball. When the Patriots ushered in a new change and Vrabel came on board, and he didn't do this alone. Like, obviously, he has Elliott Wolf, who is the general manager. He has his trusted confidant, personnel executive, Ryan Cowden, who I work with the Carolina Panthers. Also on board, Alonzo Highsmith is a well-respected personnel executive. All those guys lead a front office that understands not only good players, but good people and how the jigsaw puzzle has to fit together. And what they've done defensively, you think about the vets that they brought over, Carlton Davis coming over from Detroit after spending a ton of years in Tampa being a number one corner. What he's done to team up with Christian Gonzalez to give them two number one corners that can snuff out anybody in the perimeter and allow them to play man-to-man coverage. Robert Spillane, linebacker coming over from the Raiders and just being a tackling machine in between the tackles. Harold Landry being a pass rushing specialist. Milton Williams coming off a big performance in the Super Bowl and how he has anchored that interior of the line. But I would say K'Lavon Chaisson, who they brought over. K'Lavon Chaisson was a top pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars who couldn't find his way for a few different stops. But now you look at him, 7.5 sacks, dominating throughout the postseason. To me, that is a testament on how culture and environment and I would say scheme can help a player go from an also ran to a really good, potentially a great player. That is what's happened in New England. And all of these things that some would chalk up to luck, and that to me is a very intentional process that they went through where they got the right people on the bus, and then they got the right people on the bus in the right seats. And now the bus is headed to Santa Clara because they have it. And let me talk about like the personnel guys like Elliott Wolf and Ryan Cowden and Alonzo and those guys, like having known them personally and professionally for a long time. Elliott Wolf's dad, Ron Wolf, was instrumental in my career, helping me transition from wide receiver to defensive back because he had been familiar with that process with the Raiders. Elliott, I've known since he was a little kid coming through the building and those things. He has always been someone who has had an eye for talent, always been someone who deserved his chance to be able to run a squad, and now he's gotten that. And with the help of Vrabel and a talented staff, man, this team is well put together. And the scary thing for all of the Patriots haters, they are just getting started because they have more money to spend, they have more draft picks to get, and if they pull it off and win it now, a year early, there's going to be hell to pay when they really put it together the way that they want it. But the team that they have to beat, the Seattle Seahawks, they are also well constructed and put together in a way that just look, it amazes me. And I would say also having a relationship there. I first started out as a scout working for the Seattle Seahawks. John Snyder was the first guy to give me a job. He was someone that worked in Green Bay under Ron Wolf. He was the guy to pick me up from the airport when I came there as a street free agent and those things. And so he has been around the process and a lot of things that Elliott does naturally because his dad taught him. John Snyder does the same things in terms of type of players they operate with, how they go about their business being a draft and develop program, but moreover, identifying the right guy to usher in the culture change that was needed in Seattle. Because remember, a couple of years ago, when they moved on from Pete Carroll, there was a lot of consternation about how are they going to do this without Pete? Because Pete was the dominant force when it came to bringing the Seattle Seahawks back. And Pete deserves a lot of credit. What they did with the Legion of Boom, how they dominated in those 2010s with a defense that led the league in scoring 4 years in a row, went to 2 Super Bowls back-to-back, should have won back-to-back Super Bowls if not for, I would say, a questionable offensive decision not to hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch, but to throw it and have it intercepted. But that's neither here nor there. But it spoke to how dominant the Seattle Seahawks were. They fell off a little bit at the end of Pete Carroll's tenure, and eventually they gave John Snyder an opportunity to run the team the way that he saw fit. And the first thing that he did, he brings over a young, dynamic leader in Mike McDonald, a guy who had been the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Prior to that, he was defensive coordinator for the Michigan Wolverines. He did a great uh, job in both of those roles, but he comes over as a head coach. And you talk about a young head coach that is tasked with following behind. Let's be honest, like Pete Carroll, no matter how it ended and how it played out in Las Vegas this year, he's a coaching legend. Mike McDonald comes in and he's young, he's dynamic, he has a bit of a military background, so he's serious, he's focused, but he has a way of connecting with the team, and he is brilliant when it comes to the X's and O's on defense. He brought with him Leslie Frazier to help him kind of manage everything because Leslie's experience as a former head coach is something that he leans on. But in Mike McDonald, I think what was really, really interesting in that first year where they might have struggled a little bit, Geno Smith didn't play well. We saw DK Metcalf have some meltdowns, and they talk about MOB up in Seattle. And when they talk about that, it is mission over BS. They are about people that are about the mission, about where the team is going, and not about the individual agendas. And perhaps that is why Geno and DK Metcalf are no longer there. They felt like they wanted a locker room full of team guys, full of the right stuff where they could kind of make this thing work. And when you look at the behind the scenes clips of how he talked about what they were going to be, how they were going to eventually get to the championship game, the environment, he kind of spoke some of those things into existence. But he matched his words with actions, meaning that he wanted to make sure that the transactions that they made allowed them to get the people that they needed to build the team that would allow them to play the way that he saw fit. And he felt like to play a certain way, they had to be connected. They had to have the chemistry. They had to have 12 playing as one, which is what he talked about in the post-game presser of the AFC Championship game. And the guy that gets a lot of credit, deservedly, for that has been Sam Darnold. And I think Sam Darnold is the perfect example to highlight when we talk about the Seattle Seahawks building it back and bringing it back. Sam Darnold, third overall pick in 2018, a guy that had bounced around. He's on his fifth team in 8 years. There were people that had given up on him. He had bounced around so much that you were like, man, he's just another flame out of bust. He has a great year in Minnesota, but you're wondering, is he a one-year wonder? They bring him over, sign him 3-year, $100 million deal. And at the time, it was a bit controversial because they traded away Geno, who had a solid year before that, to bring Sam Darnold over. And you wondered, would he be able to replicate what he did in Minnesota? Well, second year in a row that he's won 14 games, plays at a high level. Clint Kubiak is drawing it up because remember, Mike McDonald fired Ryan Grubb after one season, brings Clint Kubiak over. Clint Kubiak elevates this offense by getting Sam Darnold to play at a high level. This scheme, and I've talked about this scheme for years in terms of the Shanahan-Kubiak system, however you want to phrase it, their version of the West Coast system can turn average players into Pro Bowlers into MVPs. We've seen it in multiple locations. We've seen this offense elevate Matt Ryan and make Matt Ryan an MVP. We've seen this offense turn Brock Purdy from Mr. Irrelevant into a Pro Bowl caliber player. And we've seen it continue to help Sam Darnold find his way in the league. He has been terrific in this offense. The run game is superb. Rick Dennison, O-line guru, is helping them out behind the scenes, and they get it. And Kubiak being aggressive enough to change the picture, to create and exploit mismatches, has allowed Sam Darnold to be very, very comfortable. And if you looked at how they played in the championship game, the third time they played the Rams and how the Rams felt like, and boldly talk about how they had Sam Darnold's number. First game, he turned it over. Second game on Thursday night, he plays well. But he absolutely shredded the LA Rams in that championship game. And a lot of that was just the brilliant X's and O's on top of Sam Darnold understanding how he needed to play and playing to the standard on that game. But there are other people that are now playing to this standard, this championship standard that's existed in Seattle, but it needed a refreshing under a new leader in Mike McDonald. And JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is now, I'll say this, he's number one receiver in football. Receiving leader, dominant, unguardable, spent last season playing in the slot, moved to outside this year. He is an unstoppable force. championship game. Everyone knows he's the number one receiver. Everyone knows the ball is going to him. 10 catches, 153 yards. You can't stop him. 10 catches on 12 targets for 153 yards. In the biggest game of the year, where you know the ball is going to him, you can't stop him. And one of the reasons he's become unstoppable is the underrated signing of Cooper Kupp, who was, unceremoniously dismissed from the LA Rams. They talked about the former Super Bowl MVP not having it. They didn't think he can do it. He comes back to the Pacific Northwest, where he starred at Eastern Washington. And Jackson Smith and Jigba talked about this after. He said when Cooper Kupp came in, he talked about process more than results. Do the process of getting better every day. Commit to that process. Do the work, practice, prepare, and results will speak for themselves. When you have a leader quietly behind the scenes like Cooper Kupp that is pushing your young guys to do the little things that allowed him to be great, the little things that helped him become a Triple Crown winner, man, there's a buy-in. And when he's active and involved in the running game as a blocker, and the people see the sacrifice from a veteran, an accomplished veteran like that, it makes them all come on board. And so what you're hearing and what you're seeing, the theme is, man, they have a bunch of selfless worker bees that are getting it done. And that is what Mike McDonald was talking about when it came to MOB, mission over BS. But the other thing that has happened with Mike McDonald coming over, that defense, the dark side, best defense that we've seen in franchise history. And I know they got to cap it off with a Super Bowl win, but this is the best defense that the Seattle Seahawks have ever had. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I love the Legion of Boom. When that run existed in the 2010s, I was the champion of the Seattle Seahawks in terms of how they got down. Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner, Earl Thomas, what they would do up front, Michael Bennett. They were dominant. They were terrific. But this version is different. They're more talented from back to front. They're disruptive. They're dominant. They're dynamic. They have a ton of talent up front where they can just win their one-on-ones. They don't have to blitz you, but they will blitz you. You think about Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy, explosive on the inside. You have DeMarcus Lawrence coming over from the Cowboys, and he's been rejuvenated because the standards and the expectations are different than maybe what he had in Dallas. They're demanding that he runs to the football. He's willingly running to the football and being disruptive and displaying the kind of effort, the championship effort that you want to see. Uchenna Nwosu playing on the other side, his ability to get after it and go. And there are countless others in the front line that are doing it. You have Ernest Jones and Drake Thomas playing at the second level, and they may not stack up to what Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright and those guys did. But in this scheme, playing behind those guys, they make a ton of plays. They deliver the big hits that you want. But the stars of the unit, man, in the back end, man, they are terrific in the back end with Devin Witherspoon and Nick Emmanwori being able to do it. In Witherspoon, you have a corner that can play outside or inside. He can track and match if he needs to. They're terrific playing man-to-man. They can play zone, high IQ players, very technically sound. So that allows you to do a bunch of different things. And Mike McDonald and his defense has compartmentalized and conceptualized things to make it very easy for his defensive backs to move around. Emmanwori is a guy that can play in the box, whether it's, as a nickel hybrid linebacker, whether it's in the slot dealing with tight ends and running backs coming out of the backfield, whatever they need him to do, he can do on a given week. He can blitz off the edge and be a factor as a pass rusher, as the extra guy, the fifth defender coming home attacking pass protection. And then when you have some of the other guys, Julian Love in the back end, you have Rick Woolen, they have a team that can match up with you and give you problems. And they have a mad scientist as a defensive play caller who doesn't mind disrupting what the offense is doing. And he has snowflake game plans that change each and every week based on what the offense does. And when you take the combination of talent and the tactics, it makes the Seattle Seahawks a nightmare to deal with. And even though they gave up a ton of points to the Rams, the Rams have scored points on everybody. The Seahawks, from top to bottom, are one of the more talented teams. And having watched them up close and personal when I was down in Jacksonville on the sideline, man, it's hard to say that there's a better team in the league than them. But I'll say this about both franchises. I don't know if you find better cultures in any locker room besides these two teams. Because when I look at these teams play, in their games. I see two teams that are committed, connected. The communication is great. They play hard. They're willing to outwork and outlast you. And that is why they're representing the AFC and the NFC in the Super Bowl and Super Bowl 60. Now, our buddies at FanDuel Sportsbook have the odds up there in Seattle right now is a 4.5 point favorite over the Patriots. And I'm not quite ready to make a prediction, but man, I think this is going to be a barn burner like most of the playoff games have gone. I can sit here and say that, man, when I look on paper, the Seattle Seahawks appear to be the more talented team. I then look at the Patriots and I was like, man, it's hard to argue and dispute their toughness, particularly when you have Mike Vrabel in charge. I think this is going to be a terrific Super Bowl, and I hope that everyone tunes in because this is going to be one that the football world is going to learn a lot about the team building process and some of those lessons learned from this journey that these teams went on are going to change the way the teams build their franchises and their rosters in the future. Well, that was my little journey on both of these teams and how they got to Super Bowl 60. I am Bucky Brooks. This was the Bucky Brooks Show. Later in the week, we're going to have some cool stuff. I think we're going to catch up with Dave Pollock, and we're going to begin to talk about the draft. Because if your team is not in the Super Bowl, we got to start looking at next year to see how we can get our team there. And the way that we do it, got to get some players in the draft. We're going to talk about it next time. Till then, I'll talk to you.